Gratefully, since I have not prepared one, our speaker today needs no introduction. I give you Gerry Murphy.
Thank you, Mark. Let's get going here. All right. This microphone helps me to hear myself better, so I'll keep it at a comfortable level. Glasses would help. All right. How long till my soul gets it right? Can any human being ever reach that kind of light? That's taken from the song Galileo by Indigo Girls, and I chose it because I think the song speaks to what I want to share with you this morning. So last summer I had this book on my reading list. I finally got to it at the end of the summer because I'd been lingering on my reading list for a very long time. And the title of the book is Spiritual Psychology, the 12 Primary Life Lessons, Information for Facilitators of Human Evolution. And I thought, well, that's as good as any topic that I could possibly think of to share with you. So the author is Steve Rother, R-O-T-H-E-R. Who is he and what is the book about? So Rother is a professional author and founder of the Lightworker organization, which is based in Las Vegas, Nevada. He's not a clinical psychologist. I would describe him as an esoterical spiritual life coach who is adept at and very much invested in the evolution of the human person. Now, he asserts that his teachings, books, and his work with clients is divinely inspired. How his work is divinely inspired and informed is not the subject of this book, as it is dealt with in his other books. My objective here is to share with you what I learned from his book, as I believe it has real spiritual value and merit. Okay, so let's begin with the premise. The premise of his book is basically this. We work to master 12 primary life attributes in our experience as humans. With each lifetime, we choose one primary life lesson to work with and continue to work on it in consecutive lives until we achieve mastery of that single attribute. Then we move on to choose another primary life lesson to work with in the following incarnation. I will add, as a kind of a side note, he does say that some generations ago, it would take the average person 100 or more lifetimes to master one primary life lesson. But fortunately, that's no longer the case. With whatever progress we've made as a human species, whatever level of consciousness we're currently at, most, but not all people can now master a primary life lesson in one lifetime, possibly 2 or 3. So we've made progress. All right, before giving you a little synopsis of each of these 12 primary life lessons according to the author, I want to give you a little glossary of terms. There are 3 terms he uses repeatedly throughout the book, and you will hear me use them as I give you the little summary of each primary life lesson. The first term is energy matrix. So an energy matrix is the energy vehicle through which our higher selves interact with our physical lower selves. It's the way in which we are wired, and it controls the way in which we experience life. An energy matrix cannot and does not need to be healed. It can only be mastered. Second term he uses repeatedly is energy stamp. An energy stamp is a particular form of energy that gets imprinted on us through certain experiences during a particular lifetime. It can be positive or negative. However, unlike energy matrices, an energy stamp can be healed and released in a given lifetime. And the third term that he uses is catalyst. So a catalyst is a pivotal person in your life who is responsible for activating the life lesson you've chosen to work on. Catalysts are more predominant when working with energy stamps than when working with an energy matrix, but they're generally present in both. An example would be, let's say you grew up in a household where you're moving all the time. Maybe your dad's in the services, in the army or something, or whatever it might be, a diplomat. And you do not experience a solid foundation at home because you're constantly moving. So here your father is the catalyst who has imprinted you with the energy stamp of adaptation. And it's one of the 12 primary life lessons. So, what are the 12 primary life lessons? Number 1, acceptance. Number 2, adaptation. Number 3, being, or what he calls wholeness. Number 4, charity. Number 5, communication from the heart. Number 6, creation, or what he calls holding power. Number 7, definition, or what he refers to as centering your own energy. Number 8, integrity. Number 9, love. Number 10, trust. Number 11, truth, truthfulness to your higher self. And lastly, number 12, grace. All right. There isn't going to be a quiz at the end of my spiel. So just try and listen to a little synopsis of each one and see what resonates. Now, he does have a questionnaire at the end of the book, pretty in-depth one that you use with someone who knows you well to help you determine what your current primary life lesson is, the one that you're working on. So acceptance. Here we are dealing with self-esteem, self-acceptance, and the art of graceful acceptance. So this life lesson is most often experienced in female form. Those working with this life lesson have difficulty accepting the rewards of their creations. Those working with this life lesson tend to subscribe to a belief system that they are unworthy. If this belief system stems from an energy stamp, it can be rewritten and changed by uncovering the origin and then working consciously to change the script. And lastly, those who work with this life lesson have difficulty accepting responsibility for the creation of their own fulfillment and happiness. Adaptation. Here we're dealing with change. So those working with this life lesson generally do everything possible to keep things in their life on an even keel. They believe that in order to succeed, they need to keep everything just the way it is, under their control, unchanging. And thirdly, those who are working with this life lesson have a difficult time balancing their hearts and their heads. They tend to think instead of feel, rationalizing every bit of information before making any decisions. Thirdly, being, or what he refers to as wholeness. So in the being life lesson, we have an innate belief that we are not whole. And therefore we need to add something or someone to ourselves in order to become so. For some, it could be food. For others, social status, acquiring credentials, or a person. You may remember that movie, I know I've shared this one before, Gerry with Tom Cruise. I don't know when that movie came out, aging myself on that one. But he's this hotshot sports agent, very, very successful, very popular. And anyway, somewhere in the story, he has a rift with his wife, Dorothy Boyd, and they separate. And he's at this big conference, and at some point he has kind of an epiphany, realizing what he's giving up in his life if he loses his marriage. And you know the scene where he returns and she's with her support group, and he walks in and it's very dramatic, and it goes through his little spiel, ending with, I love you, you complete me. So that's just, it's cute, but it's Hollywood. It's not reality. All right, that came to mind when I thought of the wholeness life lesson. So this life lesson can be facilitated either by an energy matrix or an energy stamp. Whatever someone working with this life lesson chooses to feel whole, it can easily turn into an unhealthy reliance, obsession, or addiction. The art of mastering this life lesson lies in appreciating what you already are and just being with that. And lastly, the life lesson of being often precedes the life lesson of truth. Okay, moving on to charity. Also, he refers it to as harmony. So true charity, in terms of a life attribute, means honoring the connection we have to all people. When our actions honor all people, we are the ones who flourish. In order to apply charity, however, we must first learn to center our own energy. And this involves the life lesson of definition, which I'll go into in a moment. For some who are working with the life lesson of charity, this attribute is focused inwardly. And they'll often appear to be selfish and self-serving. In the lower levels of mastery, their own needs and feelings are foremost because their disconnection to those around them means they simply can't feel much else. When the attribute of charity is overly focused outwardly, in the lower levels of mastery, this will appear as a person who overcompensates in relationships, the person who tries too hard to be liked. This often turns people off. But for the person working with this life lesson, they won't necessarily notice, because invariably when working with any energy matrix, we have our blind spots. Communication from the heart. So this particular life lesson is played out within the sphere of relationships, primarily love relationships. It's commonly undertaken in male form, as men generally experience the most difficulty expressing their feelings. Those working with this life lesson tend to overthink the dynamics of relationships to the negation of what they are feeling. The objective is not to complete oneself with another, but rather to learn to walk alongside another and share your life together without either of you leaning too much on the other. One thing I always say somewhere in my wedding spiel when I'm officiating at weddings is I suggest to couples that in their married relationship, they do not belong to each other. in any kind of possessive or controlling way, but they belong with each other for reasons known only to them. And that's what's important to honor. Creation, expressing self-power. So those working with this life lesson usually have tremendous creative abilities, but have difficulty channeling this into practical creations in their own life. Their problem is not recognizing their creative ability, and this is their blind spot. Many souls working in this life lesson choose to incarnate as female. Traditionally, in patriarchal societies, it's men who are the leaders and creators. However, the true creators behind men's apparent success are their spouses. The key to mastering this life lesson is to find the balance to personal power which lies in responsibility. Also learning to overcome the false belief in lack and to embrace a belief in infinite energy and abundance. All right, moving on to definition, or what he would refer to as expressing individuality through boundaries. So according to the author, it's mostly women who are working with this life lesson at this time. They tend to be healers with great emotional empathy. The problem lies in not knowing where their own energy field ends and another's begins. Most often the catalyst for this life lesson appears in these people's lives during childhood. If it's a negative influence, it will threaten their boundaries, often in an abusive way. If a positive influence, the catalyst will encourage them from an early age to set very clear boundaries for themselves. And lastly, the key to mastering this life lesson lies in learning to define one's own boundaries and becoming accustomed to placing oneself first in all situations. Integrity, or what he refers to as walking in harmony with self. Mastering this life lesson depends on our ability to integrate 4 lines of vibrations. The 4 vibrational lines of integrity are what we speak, how we act, what we think, and what we believe. If one or more of these energetic lines do not match the others, the vibrations we transmit will become blurred and unclear, resulting in a confused message transmitted to the universe and to others. A good example of this is the actor who is not really convincing in a role. He may be perfectly competent, but is not convincing enough for us to take him seriously. When we are in vibrational integrity, we interact well with others and with guidance coming from our higher self. Love, or love of self. The key to mastering this life lesson lies in learning to love ourselves unconditionally and first. It is only possible to love another to the degree that you love yourself. It is only through the act of giving love that we can set up the energy to be love and therefore to receive love. Lastly, just like with the life lesson of wholeness, our relationships will fail when we look outside ourselves for the love and acceptance that can only come from within. Trust, or trusting your higher self. So the life lesson of trust is about learning to trust oneself above all others. It's about learning to accept and hold our own power. Absolute trust places us in the flow of universal energy. Once we learn to trust, we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we turn our weaknesses into strengths. And if you'd like to dive a little deeper into the transformative power of vulnerability, I would recommend you pull up the Brené Brown's TED Talk video. It went viral some years ago. I think I wrote an article on that. That's powerful, on the transformative power of vulnerability. Moving on to truth, responsibility. So this life lesson is about standing in your own truth, rather than seeing life from the perspective and perception of others. It is about brutal honesty with oneself and taking full responsibility for one's thoughts and actions. It doesn't mean that your thoughts and actions need to be perfect, only that they need to be your own. Mastery of this life lesson means understanding that truth is based entirely on our perception, and that perception is an evolutionary process. To quote the author, "The key to finding your answers in a life lesson of truth lies not in the search, but rather in the formulation of the questions. You only have to formulate the question to find that the answer comes from within. All you need do at this point is to accept the answer as truth for you in this moment." And the last of our 12 primary life lessons is grace, or what he says refers to as walking in harmony with all things. So this is the last and most beautiful of all the life lessons. You understand the game of life, and you learn how to engage with it gracefully. Grace is our connection to universal energy, or the connection to our higher self. Now he says, not all souls are destined to work with this life lesson. Why? Because according to the author, once we've mastered 8 to 10 life lessons, we are complete enough to graduate from the earth plane. And lastly, the greatest challenge for those who do work with this life lesson is to learn to accept that very few people can grasp the deep universal truths that they know and yet cannot express in words. So in conclusion, there are many paths and tools for attaining self-mastery. Steve Rother's 12 primary life lessons is certainly a very useful roadmap in this quest. In essence, the art of mastery is about finding positive uses for all energy in all situations. Life will continue to present us with the same challenging situations and patterns until we recognize them for what they are and learn to master them. In the very famous and often quoted words of Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So thank you for your conscious attention. I'm done.